Back talking. Good morning. I welcome you from the city of Jindřichov Hradec. Thank you very much for the invitation. I have prepared a paper taking about 15 minutes, and I would like to follow from Dr. David's paper. So the topic, human cause climate extremes by destroying the water cycle, remediation is possible, principles and examples. We know from history that the civilizations are deforesting and draining, historical civilizations, right up Mesopotamia, Syria, Central Asia, North Africa. We know it from the history. So, in fact, the deforestation and draining of landscapes is done globally, including urbanization. And I would like to focus now on the effect on distribution of solar energy and on climate, how well we impacted by our farming and the landscape, together with the Faculty of Pedagogy and the České Budějovice. We have run a survey of knowledge in primary schools primarily, and we concluded that there is a lack of basic knowledge about the distribution of solar energy in the landscape. Unfortunately, the population really misses this information. The process of transpiration, evaporation of water by the plants is not taught. This chart will be probably available on the website of the conference. We would like to ask what is the share of the solar energy, how much solar energy the plants can absorb to something that we call biomass, about 8 to 90% of respondents, either the pupils of pedagogy or teachers gave correct answer. Correct answer is less than 5%, rather less than 1% of the solar energy striking Earth's surface that we harvest into biomass. Usually 50 or 40+% is discussed. So we have a basic lack of knowledge. We have also asked 631 pupils in the elementary schools. 61% feels that it's more than 5% for the photosynthesis. What's the correct answer? So, in fact, we in the temperate zone, we receive 1,000 to 1,200 kilowatt hours per square meter, and about 1 kilogram of the plant biomass grows at 1 square meter, and it contains 5 kilowatt hours of energy, which means harvesting 100 kilos, 10 metric tons per hectare. So you see how little we receive the biomass and how bad it is to combust it. So now I would like to focus on what is happening with 99.5% of solar energy that was not bound to biomass. I just wanted to show you this picture. So we see up to 1,000 watt per square meter per day, up to 8 kilowatt hours per square meter. If the area is drained, then the heat is increasing. And we are talking about cultivated land where humans are withholding water, farming is conducted there, trees are in fact grown there. So most of the solar energy is evaporated, and in fact the photosynthesis also is impacted. Then when you ask pupils, what does a plant need water for, and how do plants affect the Earth's atmosphere through their life history? That was the survey of pupils' knowledge. I got 10 answers out of 200 respondents. So when asking pupils, what does a plant need water for, give as many options as possible. So only a few percent of respondents know that a plant cools itself by evaporating water, cooling itself and its surrounding also. So generally speaking, when you ask in population how much solar energy is transferred to photosynthesis, only 8% gave correct answer, less than 5%. So we are living in a society combating climate changes. We are closing down coal mines, but with a lack of knowledge of basic knowledges about the climatic changes. I really have the proof about the knowledge of teachers and pupils. We have published it, proving that it was a serious survey conducted. So, in fact, it was the survey, solar energy, water in the landscape vegetation, new methodology of educating workers, employees of municipalities, and innovation of the curriculum related to effect of farming on a regional climate. So I would like to highlight again during the full sunshine, the unit power is watt, and we just wanted to explain that the heat transformed to water if the water is present. So of 1 liter, 1,000 watt hours, it's in fact created. So in fact, every hour is transferred into 1 liter of water. So over here we see the energy consumption, the energy used for evaporation of water by vegetation, evaporation, transpiration. You see sunny weather. The evaporation rate from plants and vegetation can be measured by various methods. So, for instance, if 100 milligrams per second is consumed, then you consume 240 watts, which is the basic physics. And now we would like to look at how we transform the temperature at the large pieces of land. Nowadays it's quite easy to take a snapshot from Třeboň. You see snapshot of the landscape close to Třeboň city. You see the meadow here. So over here we see the temperature. Asphalt heated up to 50%, 50 degrees. The meadows 30 degrees, and we see the difference is 25 to 30%, depending on the presence or lack of presence of water. Different recultivation projects are conducted in cities where projects worth of a lot of money are developed. Then trees are cut. We decrease the size of our meadow. And instead of having 20, 30 degrees in a park, we have suddenly 40 to 50 degrees when the area is paved. So the fields are in fact overheated due to loss of vegetation and water per 1 hectare, which means 202.4 megawatts per 1 hectare. And the heat is released at the speed of 240 megawatts per square kilometer, which is worth of one power station. In fact, we have also measured the temperature during the sunshine and cloudy weather. So you see the comparison of 2 dates, 20th of June 2020 and 20th of June 2017. The red dot stands for watt per square meter, the input of solar energy, and the green stands for emitted solar radiation, and the blue one stands for the flow of the solar energy into atmosphere, which is in fact the greenhouse effect. And we just got crazy about the carbon dioxide, but it does not play such an important role. It is important whether we have clouds and water in the landscape. Instead, you see the picture from 2020 June, when we have received only 1.2 watt hours of solar energy, and 0.3 kilowatt hours per square meter was emitted. So in June 2017, we have received 7.8 kilowatt hours, and 1.7 kilowatt hours was emitted in the form of heat. So you see the number of emitted heat is driven by number of the steam and clouds. So over here you see the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. We see that we just receive the water steam, which is the main greenhouse gas, which in fact it is reflected into the as the largest contributor to the natural greenhouse effect, water vapor plays an essential role in the Earth climate. However, the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere is controlled mostly by air temperature rather than by emissions. For that reason, scientists consider it a feedback agent rather than a forcing to climate change. Anthropogenic emissions of water vapor through irrigation of power plant cooling have a negligible impact on the global impact. In fact, you are influencing everything by the type of crop and also the quantity of water retained in the quality. If the landscape is dry, I don't want to talk about the quantity of harvested crops, but of course, if you have like the warehouses instead of fields, then the area is heated up to 50 degrees, for instance, and our colleagues, even from the scientific area, are objecting that the atmosphere is hot. No, it is not like that. There is a sunshine, and then it heats the base ground, and the hot water gets warmer thanks to the great temperature, and then it evaporates. The human being, in fact, influences creation of fog and creation of clouds, and for number of incoming solar energy and number of emitted heat also. It is not heated by sun. Again, if in the United States in the last 200 years about half a kilometer, sorry, half a million of square kilometers was drained, more than 50% in the USA, when the wetlands were transformed to arable lands. It is accompanied, of course, during the evaporation by 100 gigawatts heat. 1 gigawatt stands for one Temelin nuclear power plant block. So we are, in fact, losing 20 million square kilometers of arable land, which suffers desertification, which means it degrades. That means 23 hectares per 1 minute. We know that in the Czech Republic we are losing 11 hectares of arable lands, agricultural land per day. Well, this is all influencing the climate changes. I have promised positive stories. So together with my colleagues, we have written the new water paradigm. Hermann Bacher, for instance, visited India, and he just initiated a revitalization of the rivers in India. You can see those picture. It is not a science fiction. It was documented. So you see the picture from Darevade in 1996 and in 2009. What they did, they retained water. They supported planting of trees, and in fact, the yield was back to acceptable level in quite a short period of time. Over here, you see the increased level of underwater levels. So in 20 years, in fact, how the underwater level grew in 20 years in Darevade, because only through water we can just contribute to better climate changes. Over here we see the private farmer and university teacher in Shardice, and pictures what he has done. He just brought water into the landscape, and he just, in fact, grew vegetation, which is then cooling down the climate, and yield is then increasing. Large project is conducted at the Amalia farm, which is the university farm close to Prague. Elaborating on how to respond to climate changes, focusing on how science influences water retention and accumulation of water elements were introduced to the landscape, like artificial water wetlands, and for instance, the drainage was introduced quite cheaper measures to ensure vegetation cover in order not to lose land, arable land. The drainage is not a crime if conducted well, if allowing us to retain water in a simple way. That was exactly the way how it was originally drafted and designed. Unfortunately, it is not done in this way today, and we see the still strip till farming practice. Then we also see maize replacement with sorghum, and then we also see the silt fence, mobile erosion control device, and anti-erosion mobile measures, silt fence. We know that we are receiving sand from Sahara, for instance. We got a positive example, for instance, when one person in Kenavasha region, a teacher, in fact, grows in 2 hectares vegetation, trees, retains rainwater, and he is claiming that he can feed 60 people. We are working with the natural science farming, which is based on recovery of vegetation through rainwater retention. He's creating small wetlands and then transform it into fields because soil is generated quite quickly. Then it shows good yields later on. Then in Slovakia, for instance, one quite wide area was conducted in Slovakia when people were retaining water from the river creeks in order not to erode the corn fields and so on. And now I just wanted to show you the example from South Bohemia. The landscape was designed by human beings 400 to 500 years ago, and nowadays we have 10% of the landscape covered by water, and this is probably a recommendation how to manage the landscape and farming. It's not about the climate changes, it's about the way how we retain water. So thank you very much for your invitation, and I'm here for you to answer all your questions if I can directly, or I'll answer it through email. Thank you very much. Whether the agroforestry is beneficial to the water management. No, it's one of the way we need to rotate vegetation and water, and to have as largest area possible be covered by the vegetation, permanent greenery, or different plants. Other question. For the future, we expect that the population will grow, especially in tropical and subtropical countries. How is it related with desertification and deforestation and ban of forests? I have been to East Africa for about 15 times, and I have witnessed the deforestation. It is the worst thing when, in fact, I think planet will feed more people. We could use agriculture in the greenhouses when, for instance, the forests were converted to pastures. This is the worst situation. Wood lives on wood and plants lives on plant. Thank you very much.
Question to Professor Pokorný. What is the influence of vapor on climate in comparison with CO2 and methane? It's a fundamental impact. First of all, the clouds prevent the incoming solar energy, so we're getting less solar energy, and they also prevent the flow of heat in the atmosphere. Water vapor is 10 times, 50 times, 100 times more in the air than CO2 when we make measurements. And I'll be brief. The notion climate neutrality is based on the assumption that we will not give clean CO2 emissions. It's false. It's bad.